Hi everyone, welcome back to the cottage. Today I want to share with you 5 easy tips that can help you stay clutter-free. Well, I think that most of us would agree that we would prefer to live and work in spaces that didn't feel overly cluttered. We know the feeling that it gives us, that anxiety, that restless mind, but we aren't always aware of what caused the clutter in the first place. So today I want to identify the 5 main reasons that I feel that clutter kind of creeps into our lives and also offer some solutions on how we can combat it for good. The first major contributor to clutter that I want to talk about today is keeping up with the Joneses. Now, we are becoming more familiar and more acutely aware of the modern day influencer culture and realizing that when we see somebody on social media, Instagram, YouTube, any of those platforms, offering up a product or service that they've tried and they say it's life-changing, we're becoming more aware that maybe it's kind of a marketing ploy, it's something that they're being sponsored for, and we don't always take the bait on that. But I believe we are actually becoming less aware of our own circle of influence, our friends, our neighbors, our relatives, people that we come in contact with on a daily basis. We are not really realizing how much that they are also influencing us to consume things that we might not otherwise consume. We all have people in our lives who have nicer things than we have, more things than we have, and it's very easy to become jealous of someone who you consider to be a peer and want to stay on level with them, keep up with them basically. And even though they aren't intentionally trying to influence you into buying things, you will do it just naturally because you want to be relatable to them. And so, for example, if you have a friend that just casually mentions a new pair of shoes that they bought that are really comfortable, it kind of gets you thinking about your own shoes, even though you have a perfectly good pair. This contributes to the clutter that we surround ourselves with because we are buying things we don't even need, and in some cases we're even buying things we don't want. We just thought that we wanted them because somebody else had them as well. And so to combat this, it's going to be very important to be content with your own life and very mindful of the purchases that you make, very intentional. So if you feel yourself feeling tugged and influenced by whether somebody on social media or somebody in your own circle of influence, it's going to be important to take that step back and really think about it. Is this something I need? Is this something that I would value in my own life? And if the answer is no, then just step away and don't make that purchase in the first place. The next major way that I see clutter creeping into people's lives is by not putting things back in their designated spot, their designated home. The way that this scenario plays out is one of 2 ways. First, you have an item that doesn't have a place in your home. You don't have a designated spot for it. Maybe you were gifted something that you like, you just don't know where it belongs, and so maybe you have it on your counter one day, but then you need the counter space, you set it on the floor, then it's getting in the way, so you move it to a different room, and it just kind of shifts around your home or your space as a piece of clutter. And the other way is that the item has a place, but you don't get it back there. And a good example I like to use for this is if you are dressed for work, you're wearing a very nice looking outfit, it looks great, but it's not that comfortable. And so at the end of a long day at work, you decide to change it to something more comfortable. And instead of putting your outfit back into the closet or into the laundry hamper or the washing machine if it got dirty, instead you're feeling really tired and you just set it somewhere. Maybe you leave it on the bathroom floor, maybe you put it on a chair in your bedroom. You just set it there and think to yourself, when I'm feeling less tired, when I have a little bit more energy, I will put this outfit away in its designated spot. The problem is when an item is out of place, it actually becomes a magnet for more clutter. And so you get home the next day after a long day of work and you change your clothes, and the same cycle tends to repeat itself. You see your other outfit laying on the chair, and so you just drop this second outfit there as well, thinking to yourself, when I get a chance, I will put both of the outfits away. And the cycle continues, and pretty soon that chair has become your new spot for where to lay your clothes. And so the solution to this clutter problem is pretty obvious. Just make sure that you're putting things away where they belong. If you have something that has come into your life that you don't have a designated spot for just yet, find that spot for it, find that home for it, and make sure that it gets returned when it is not in use. Another way that clutter easily creeps into our lives is when we duplicate instead of replace. This tends to happen on occasion when we have an item that is looking a little worn out, maybe it's not our style anymore, and we make the decision that we are going to replace that item. We are going to go to the store, go online, buy something to replace the item that we no longer like. But the problem is, once we get that new item home, we also justify in our minds that we should keep that first item just in case the new one doesn't work out. And so we keep that one around, and so now instead of having one of said item, we have two. The funny thing is that this duplication can happen time and time again, and so pretty soon, instead of having just two of the same type of items, you can have 4 or 8 or even 10 of the same type of items, just slightly different variations on one another. And in order to combat this problem, it's going to be very important to be confident in your decisions when it comes to purchasing or bringing in new items. If you have thought intentionally and very thoughtfully about bringing in something new and replacing an old item, you need to be confident in that. And as soon as that item comes into your home, you need to either donate, sell, or throw out the first item. And if you're able to stick with that, you're going to save yourself from taking on a whole lot of clutter. Another way that clutter tends to accumulate quickly is on flat surfaces, horizontal surfaces. They look like the perfect place to set things, but you've heard me say before many times that I believe horizontal flat surfaces are meant for working spaces. Think about your table, think about a desk, your kitchen counters, your bathroom counters. They all need to have items placed on them from time to time, but if you just continue to store things on these flat surfaces, they are going to become so cluttered and filled that you're not going to be able to use them for the purpose that they are needed for. Let me just give you a little visual representation of what I'm talking about. This is a corner in our kitchen, and like I said, we like to keep our countertop surfaces clear. But imagine if one day we decided that we wanted to keep our toaster out because we do use it almost every single day, and so we set the toaster on the counter and it didn't take up that much space really, it was just there. Eventually we would get used to seeing it there visually, and we might decide to also put our electric kettle and keep that out at all times because we use that to boil water. And pretty soon, the more items that we put there, the more items get accumulated in this one spot. As I mentioned in another tip, clutter does invite more clutter to live with it. It becomes a space that is no longer respected for its task, and it's no longer useful to me. And so again, I want to encourage you to keep those horizontal flat surfaces as clear as you possibly can. That is prime real estate for clutter, and it will move right in if you give it a chance. And the final major way that clutter accumulates in our lives is by hiding it. This is in contrast to the previous tip where you would see clutter directly on your countertop spaces, on your flat horizontal surfaces. I'm talking here about your closets, your storage spaces, your storage lockers, places that you don't even look anymore. Of course, we don't think about it as hiding our clutter. Instead, we justify it more as just storing our things, keeping things close by just in case we need them. And this type of clutter does tend to come about mostly because of excess. As I talked about before, when we do the duplication of items instead of replacing them, that first item needs to find a place to go, and so typically that is going to be in the back of a closet, the bottom of a drawer, somewhere hidden and put away. The problem is, as soon as it's behind closed doors, we almost always forget that it even exists. And so even if we had the intention to go back to item number 1, if item number 2 didn't work out, or we kept that one just in case, if that second item that we purchased breaks or we don't like it anymore, we are going to forget we have that first one as a fallback option, and so we're going to buy something again. I would say this is probably the most universally accepted form of clutter because almost everybody has some storage, and there's sort of this out of sight, out of mind mentality towards it where it's not really clutter because it doesn't affect my day-to-day life. I don't see it all the time. It's not in my way. But whether we like to admit it or not, there is that mental aspect of it, knowing that you have those things stored somewhere, maybe not knowing what you have, but knowing that you have clutter somewhere that you need to deal with at some point. It can weigh on your mind very heavily. And so in order to combat this type of clutter, it's going to be very important to be fully aware of what you have, almost doing an inventory of sorts, knowing what you have stored and where, and then constantly be looking through it. Maybe once a year, go through your storage containers and see what you have in them and make decisions at that point if you need to keep those items or if you can finally let them go. And this is really going to help you to keep that inventory of items that are behind closed doors to the absolute minimum. Alright guys, well those are the 5 main reasons that I believe clutter finds its way into our lives. We personally have been guilty of all 5 of these scenarios from time to time here in our home. So don't feel guilty at all if you are dealing with some of the same problems. Just know that they're very common, and understanding how clutter does creep into our lives is going to be the first step in being able to combat it. If you have another tip of how to rid yourself of clutter and you'd like to share it with this community, please leave me a comment down below. I would love to chat about that. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope that you'll stop by the cottage again really soon.